Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. It was a quiet Thursday evening. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a tapestry of dusky purples and grays. I slipped my shoes off at the door and set my briefcase down with the usual thud. Samantha's routine was predictable, and I took comfort in the normalcy of it. As I moved quietly through the hallway towards the kitchen, I overheard muffled voices. Samantha's laughter was unmistakable, but there was another voice, Linda's. They were in the kitchen, a place where most of our conversations occurred. Their voices were punctuated by the clinking of china, a sound that felt oddly serene against the backdrop of my mounting anxiety. I crept closer, making sure not to make a sound. I could see through the open door as Samantha and Linda sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by notebooks, pens, and half-empty cups of tea. Samantha was animated, her hands gesturing as she spoke, while Linda listened with rapt attention. "So, it's almost done." Linda's voice was curious, tinged with a hint of admiration. "Yes." Samantha's voice was bright, almost musical. "I've been working on it for months. It's finally coming together." Linda leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with intrigue. "You've been so secretive about this." "What is it, really?" "It's a list," Samantha said, her tone dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. She glanced around as if ensuring no one else was listening. "A list of people I'll be meeting." "Well, not just meeting. It's all part of a plan." Linda's eyebrows shot up. "A plan? What kind of plan?" Samantha's eyes lit up with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "It's a very personal plan. I've arranged everything so carefully. The timing, the locations, everything needs to be perfect. Next week is the start of it." Linda's eyes widened. "The start of what?" "The start of the first meeting," Samantha said, her voice lowering further. "The first time I'll see him." The room seemed to close in around me. The word him echoed in my mind, becoming louder with each repetition. It felt like my heart was being squeezed in a vice. "Who's the lucky guy?" Linda asked, her tone half joking, half curious. Samantha's face flushed slightly, but she kept her voice steady. "You remember the client I mentioned? The one who's been so generous with donations? Well, he's the first." Linda's eyes widened further. "Wait, you're talking about an affair, aren't you?" Samantha nodded, her face a mixture of shame and defiance. "Yes, Linda. It's not just him, though. There are a couple more. All planned out. I've been so meticulous. I had to be." Linda's gaze softened with understanding, though it was clear she was still processing. "You really think this is going to work?" Samantha's smile was bittersweet. "It has to. I've put so much effort into it. Paul has no idea. Everything will go according to plan." A cold shiver ran down my spine. The casual way Samantha spoke about her plan, the calculated detail, it was as though she was discussing a business deal, not a betrayal. I took a step back, feeling the weight of their conversation settling heavily on my shoulders. I didn't want to hear more. The realization was enough. My mind raced, trying to piece together what I had just learned. I had to get out of there before my presence was detected. I turned and made my way back to the front door, my steps feeling heavier with each stride. As I slipped out the door, I felt a profound sense of loss, of betrayal. The world outside seemed distant, muted by the shock of the revelation. I knew things would never be the same. The list Samantha had so carefully crafted was a blueprint for her infidelity, and I was left to grapple with the fallout of her choices. The days that followed were a blur of dread and disbelief. I barely managed to focus on work, my mind constantly replaying the conversation I'd overheard. The routine I had taken for granted seemed hollow and meaningless. My desk, once a sanctuary of productivity, felt like a prison. The morning after my discovery, I forced myself to go through the motions of a normal day. Samantha was up early, preparing breakfast with her usual precision. She hummed a cheerful tune as she moved about the kitchen, oblivious to the storm brewing within me. "Good morning," I said, my voice intentionally light as I walked in. Samantha looked up, her smile warm and genuine. "Good morning. I made your favorite, pancakes." I forced a smile, taking my place at the table. "Thanks. They look great." We ate in relative silence, the kind that spoke volumes. Samantha chatted about her day, her plans for the charity, and how she hoped the upcoming event would be a success. I nodded and responded with the appropriate comments, all the while grappling with the knowledge of her betrayal. When I finally left for work, I was grateful for the distraction. But even there, I struggled to concentrate. Every email I sent, every meeting I attended, felt like a mere distraction from the impending confrontation I knew was inevitable. That evening, I chose to stay out of the house longer than usual. I found myself in a dimly lit pub on the outskirts of town, nursing a lukewarm beer. The place was practically deserted, which suited me fine. I needed solitude to process what I had learned and to make plans. As I sat in a corner booth, a scruffy bartender approached, his face lined with years of hard work. "Rough day," I looked up, forcing a smile. "You could say that. Just need a quiet drink." "Got it," he said, sliding the beer towards me. "If you need to talk, I'm all ears. I've heard just about everything." I shook my head, not ready to spill my heart to a stranger. "No, it's all right. Just trying to clear my head." The conversation with the bartender was brief. I spent the rest of the evening in my own thoughts, mentally running through the steps I would need to take to protect myself. The idea of confronting Samantha was daunting, but the financial aspect of it could not be ignored. Over the next few days, I took precautionary measures. I visited a lawyer to discuss my options, arranged for a private bank account, and began moving some of my assets. Each step felt like a small, necessary betrayal of trust, but I was determined to shield myself from the fallout of Samantha's actions. On the third night, I finally gathered the courage to confront her. The house was quiet, the only sound being the hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of crickets outside. Samantha was working late in her study, a habit she had developed over the years. I knocked lightly on the door before pushing it open. Samantha looked up from her papers, her face reflecting surprise and a hint of irritation. "Paul, it's late." "What's wrong?" she asked, her tone sharp but concerned. I stepped into the room, closing the door behind me. "We need to talk." Samantha's expression shifted to one of apprehension. "About what?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. "About the list. And everything that's been going on." Her face paled, and she set her pen down. "Paul, don't," I interrupted, my voice rising. "I know about your plans. I heard you talking with Linda. I know you've been planning to cheat on me." Samantha's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words. "Paul, no," I cut her off again. "I don't want excuses. I want to understand why. Why you felt the need to do this." Samantha's shoulders slumped. "I didn't want to hurt you. It wasn't about you, it was about me. I felt lost. And the list was my way of trying to regain control, of feeling something I thought I had lost." "Regain control?" I echoed, incredulous. "By planning an affair? By betraying me?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and she looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry, Paul. I never meant for it to come out like this. It doesn't matter now," I said, the finality in my voice cutting through her attempts to justify her actions. "What matters is that you've broken our trust. I need to figure out what to do next." The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the unspoken understanding that our marriage was teetering on the edge. Samantha's tears fell silently, and I turned away, feeling the weight of our crumbling relationship settling heavily on my shoulders. The confrontation had revealed the depth of the betrayal, and the path forward was uncertain and painful. It was a crisp, clear Sunday afternoon, the kind of day that promised tranquility but felt heavy with unspoken tension. I chose this moment deliberately, daylight, when everything seemed deceptively calm, and when Samantha was most likely to be unguarded. She was in the kitchen, her face lit by the afternoon sun streaming through the window, as she meticulously arranged flowers in a vase. I watched her for a moment from the doorway, her concentration evident in the way she adjusted each stem with care. The normalcy of the scene only amplified the weight of what I was about to do. "Hey," I said, stepping into the room. Samantha looked up, her smile bright but with a hint of fatigue. "Oh, hi Paul. You're home early. How was your day?" "Busy," I said, forcing a smile. "Can we talk?" Her expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I gestured to the dining table. "Let's sit." We took our places at the table, the sun casting long shadows across the room. Samantha's demeanor was composed, but I could see the apprehension in her eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "Samantha," I began, my voice steady but edged with tension. "I need to talk to you about the list." Her eyes widened slightly, and she swallowed hard. "Paul, No," I interrupted, "I don't want to hear excuses right now. I overheard you and Linda talking about it. I know what it's really about." Samantha's face went pale, and she looked down at her hands, which were resting nervously in her lap. I didn't want you to find out this way. I was planning to tell you, but it wasn't supposed to be like this." "Planning to tell me?" I echoed, incredulous. "Planning to tell me after you'd already started?" She flinched at the harshness of my tone. "Paul, I know it sounds terrible. But it wasn't just about cheating. I felt trapped, like everything was slipping away from me. The list was a way to regain some sense of control." I leaned forward, my frustration boiling over. "Regain control? By orchestrating affairs? How does that even make sense?" Samantha's eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. "It wasn't supposed to hurt you. I was lost, and I thought this would help me find myself again. I didn't realize how wrong it was until it was too late." "Too late?" I snapped. "You've been planning this for months, and now you're telling me it's too late." The silence that followed was suffocating. Samantha wiped away a tear and looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Paul, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. I just what?" I cut her off, my voice rising. "You just wanted to live a double life. Deceive me while I was completely in the dark." Samantha's voice trembled. "I was scared. Scared of losing myself, losing everything we had. I didn't know how to handle it." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "You didn't know how to handle it. And so you decided to betray me? To plan multiple affairs behind my back." Samantha stood up as well, reaching out towards me. "Please, Paul, don't walk away. Let's talk this through. We can work this out." I shook my head, stepping back. "I don't know if we can. Trust doesn't just come back after it's been shattered like this." The hurt in her eyes was palpable, but it did little to soften the blow of her actions. I could feel my heart racing, the anger and sadness merging into a painful clarity. I needed space, time to process what had happened and to decide what came next. "I need some time," I said quietly, my voice heavy with finality. "I need to think." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Samantha standing in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. The confrontation had laid bare the extent of her betrayal, and I felt the weight of our fractured relationship pressing down on me. As I left the house, the quiet of the afternoon felt like an unbearable backdrop to the chaos within me. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with pain and decisions I wasn't ready to make. The confrontation had exposed the cracks in our marriage, and now, the real work of reckoning with them would begin. The night of Samantha's charity event arrived with a deceptive air of normalcy. The venue was an elegant hall adorned with twinkling lights and sophisticated decor. Guests mingled, their laughter and clinking glasses creating a lively hum that contrasted sharply with the turmoil inside me. I had made up my mind, tonight, I would confront Samantha publicly. The party was in full swing when I arrived. Samantha was in her element, moving gracefully through the crowd, her charm on full display. She greeted guests with the practiced ease of someone who had done this countless times before. Linda was by her side, engaging in animated conversation with a few patrons. I spotted Samantha from across the room, her face alight with the satisfaction of a successful event. I took a deep breath and approached the bar, where I was greeted by the same bartender I'd seen a few nights earlier. "Evening," he said with a nod. "You look like you're ready for another drink." "Not tonight," I replied, my voice tight. "Tonight, I'm here for something else." I waited until Samantha took the stage for her speech. The room fell into a hush as she walked to the microphone, her smile bright and eyes sparkling with excitement. "Thank you all so much for coming," Samantha began, her voice resonant with warmth. "Your support means the world to us and to the cause we're here for tonight." The crowd clapped and cheered, their admiration palpable. I watched her, my heart pounding. This was the moment. I moved towards the stage, carefully navigating through the crowd. As Samantha continued to speak, I cleared my throat loudly enough to draw attention. The room fell silent, eyes turning towards me. Samantha's smile faltered as she noticed me advancing. "Paul," she said, confusion and concern in her voice. "What are you doing?" "I need to say something," I said, my voice carrying across the room. The murmurs grew louder as the crowd sensed the tension. Samantha's face paled. "Paul, not now. Please." I ignored her plea and took the microphone from her hand. The room was a sea of expectant faces, and I could feel the weight of their curiosity pressing in on me. Samantha's charity friends, clients, and even Linda were watching intently. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "but I have something important to share." The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a mix of confusion and intrigue. Samantha's eyes were wide, her hands trembling as she looked at me. "This list," I began, "the one Samantha's been so secretive about, it's not for a charity event. It's a list of people she's been planning to meet with." Samantha's face turned red, her eyes pleading with me to stop. "Paul, please," I continued, determined to reveal the truth. "It's not just one person. It's multiple people. She's been orchestrating affairs behind my back. Planning to betray me with her former clients and even someone from her charity." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Linda's face turned a ghostly white, and she looked away, unable to meet my gaze. The realization hit the crowd, and the elegant facade of the event shattered. "Is this true?" a woman near the front asked, her voice trembling. "Samantha, is it true?" Samantha stood frozen, her face a mask of shame. "Yes," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It's true." I looked around at the crowd, the once celebratory atmosphere now charged with shock and discomfort. I needed everyone to know the truth. Samantha's actions have been deceitful, and I couldn't let her continue with this facade. Samantha's eyes filled with tears, her mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Paul, please." I stepped away from the microphone, my voice low but firm. "I'm done here. I've said what I needed to say." I handed the microphone back to a stunned event coordinator and walked out of the venue, leaving behind the chaos of exposed lies and shattered trust. The cool night air felt like a reprieve from the storm of emotions swirling inside me. As I drove away, the weight of what I had done settled heavily on my shoulders. The exposure had been brutal, but it was necessary. Samantha's carefully constructed world had come crashing down, and now, the fallout would begin.